Welcome to the Utica Phoenix Deep Dive. And today we're going to be looking into President-elect Trump's plan to track undocumented minors.
Yeah. It's a pretty big issue, obviously.
It is.
We're going to be looking at immigration law,
Right.
human rights,
Yeah.
the very definition of family in America as it stands now.
All right.
So it's going to be a lot to cover.
So to set the stage a little bit,
Sure.
you might remember from the campaign trail that Trump was really focusing on cracking down on illegal immigration.
Right.
And now he's appointed Tom Homan as his border czar.
Yes.
So we're starting to get a little bit more of a concrete picture of what that's going to look like.
Yes.
And there was a recent interview with Homan that you included in your research.
Yes, I did.
And he laid out some plans that are pretty controversial, particularly when it comes to these missing children.
Yes. There's over 300,000 undocumented minors that are unaccounted for
Wow.
after being placed with sponsors in the U.S. Now, these are children who arrived unaccompanied and were placed with families or individuals by the Office of Refugee Resettlement.
Right. Now, for those who might not know what that is, could you explain?
Sure. So the Office of Refugee Resettlement is a government agency that's responsible for the care and placement of unaccompanied migrant children.
Okay.
And they're supposed to conduct follow-up checks, but some of these minors or their guardians become unreachable.
Okay.
This is where that missing classification comes in.
Mhm.
And it's obviously sparked a lot of concern.
Right. Homan paints a pretty dire picture.
He does.
He's talking about these kids ending up in forced labor,
Right.
the sex trade,
Yeah.
like really awful situations.
Understandably, people are very concerned about the possibility of exploitation.
Of course.
However, that term missing doesn't automatically equate to danger.
That's true.
There's a multitude of reasons why a child or their sponsor might become unreachable by ORR.
Right.
And just assuming the worst case scenario isn't really accurate.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the headlines
Yeah.
and the emotion of it all.
Yeah.
But we have to look at all sides.
Absolutely.
So how is Homan proposing to address this missing children issue?
His plan involves utilizing nonprofits and private contractors to locate these children.
Okay.
Now, this raises some immediate questions about privacy,
Yeah.
the potential for overreach, and the impact on these already vulnerable individuals.
Right.
I mean, just imagine you're a teenager who came to this country
Yeah.
seeking a better life, and now you find yourself being tracked down by a private organization.
Right.
It's bound to create fear and distrust.
That's a really good point. So this is just one piece of the puzzle here.
It is.
We also need to talk about the impact on families,
Right.
what they call mixed status families.
Mixed status families, meaning families where some members are undocumented and others are citizens or legal residents.
Right.
This is a huge population.
Yeah.
An estimated 4.7 million such families in the U.S.
Wow. And Trump and Homan have both indicated that they prefer to deport these families together as a unit,
That's right.
which puts these families in an impossible position.
It does.
Deportation together means leaving everything behind,
Right.
facing potential hardship in their home countries.
Exactly. But if they choose to stay, they face separation.
Right.
A parent potentially being deported while their U.S. citizen child remains here,
Yeah.
it's just an awful choice to have to make.
It really is.
Really life-altering consequences.
And it leads us right into another part of Homan's plan, which is the family detention centers,
Yes.
which the Biden administration had gotten rid of.
Yes, they did.
But he wants to bring it back.
He does.
And he's saying that he wants to use these soft-sided tent structures to house these families while they await deportation proceedings.
So Homan is arguing that these facilities are necessary based on the sheer number of detentions that they're anticipating.
Right.
But a lot of people are raising concerns about the harm to the children, especially with the issues in the past with prolonged detention.
Right. And even that term soft-sided
Yeah.
almost seems like they're trying to dress it up
It does.
to make it seem less,
A little euphemistic.
euphemistic.
Exactly.
It's still detention.
It is.
It's still holding families against their will.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember, even if they're trying to make it more humane than in the past,
Yeah.
detaining families, and especially children, is inherently traumatic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research on the psychological and developmental damage that prolonged detention can cause.
So we're seeing a pattern here
We are.
of enforcement and deterrence, but without really focusing on the human cost,
Right.
the potential consequences for these families.
Yeah. And we see that pattern repeating when we look at his enforcement approach, too.
Right.
He said he doesn't envision these mass roundups
Right.
with the military,
Uh-huh.
but he does want to do this targeted enforcement,
All right.
prioritizing criminals, gang members, and fugitives.
Okay, so on the surface,
Yeah.
that sounds reasonable.
Right.
But how do we make sure that doesn't turn into racial profiling or targeting people for
Exactly.
really flimsy reasons?
That's the question, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, history has shown us that even with the best of intentions,
Right.
these things can go sideways.
Yeah.
We saw this with Obama, with that Secure Communities program.
Oh, go on.
It was supposed to target serious criminals,
Right.
but they ended up getting a lot of people who weren't a threat.
And it creates such a chilling effect.
It does.
I mean, imagine being an undocumented immigrant
Yeah.
living in a community where worksite raids are happening
Right.
all the time.
Right.
You're not going to want to report crimes.
Exactly.
You're not going to want to seek medical attention.
Right.
You're not even going to want to send your kids to school.
Right. You're going to be afraid.
Right.
And that fear can be just as damaging as the deportations themselves.
Yep.
It really tears apart communities.
Speaking of worksite raids,
Yes.
those are also
Back on the table.
back
right?
on the table,
Yep.
which Biden had gotten rid of.
Yes.
And that has huge implications,
It does.
not just for the workers,
Right.
but the businesses too.
Especially industries that rely on immigrant labor. I mean, they could lose huge chunks of their workforce overnight.
And the legal
Legal.
and reputational damage
Oh, yeah.
for employing undocumented workers, even if they didn't know.
Of course.
It seems like there are a lot of unintended consequences here.
And a lot of critics are bringing that up.
Right.
That this focus on enforcement doesn't consider the economic and social impacts
Right.
of mass deportations.
And then there's the whole legal battle over birthright citizenship.
Oh, yeah. The 14th Amendment says anyone born in the U.S. is a citizen,
Right.
except for children of diplomats.
Right.
But Trump has said for a long time that he wants to challenge that
Yeah.
he doesn't think it should apply to children of undocumented immigrants.
And this isn't just talk.
No.
He actually tried to do this in his first term
He did.
through executive orders and policy changes.
Right. Yeah.
But it got tied up in court.
It did. It's a very controversial issue.
Yeah.
Strong legal arguments on both sides.
So we've got this plan that's all about enforcement and deterrence,
Right.
but doesn't seem to care about unintended consequences
Yeah.
or the human cost.
Or the human cost.
So is there any room for compassion in this plan?
That's what a lot of people are asking.
Yeah.
Homan says it's about personal responsibility.
Okay.
He says that parents who chose to have children here illegally knew the risks. They should face the consequences.
Right.
Having a kid here shouldn't protect you from immigration law.
But that seems kind of simplistic,
It does.
doesn't it?
Oversimplifying a very complex reality.
Yeah.
It ignores the desperation
Right.
that drives these families
Uh-huh.
to make these dangerous journeys.
Uh-huh.
It ignores the poverty and violence that they're fleeing from.
And it ignores the fact that a lot of these families
exactly.
have been here a long time,
Years.
contributing,
Paying taxes.
raising their kids
Yeah.
as Americans,
As Americans.
to just uproot them and send them back to
Right.
countries they might not even remember.
Right.
Seems cruel and pointless.
It does seem counterproductive.
So what's the alternative?
Well,
If strict enforcement isn't the answer,
yeah.
what else could we do?
Some people are pushing for a more comprehensive approach,
Okay.
one that addresses border security and the root causes of migration.
Okay. So what would that look like?
Well, it could involve investing
Uh-huh.
in economic development and security
Right.
in Central American countries,
Okay.
and maybe a pathway to citizenship
Right.
for undocumented immigrants who are already here
Right.
contributing.
And not causing any problems.
Right.
That would require a huge shift in our thinking, though.
It would.
Right.
Moving away from all this fear-based rhetoric that we've been hearing for so long.
It would take admitting that immigration is complicated.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
Right.
And we have to listen to the people
We do.
who are actually affected by these policies.
Yeah, the families.
Right.
The children.
We have to remember their humanity.
Yes.
We're all connected.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter your immigration status.
We're all part of the same fabric.
What affects one of us affects all of us.
Exactly.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about all the little details of this plan,
We have.
especially focusing on this tracking down of the undocumented minors
Right.
and the enforcement stuff.
Yeah.
But as we kind of wrap up here,
Sure.
I want to talk about what this means
Right.
for the listener.
Yeah.
know, It's easy to get caught up in the policy stuff
It is very huge.
and kind of forget
Yeah.
that this is about real people.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious,
Yeah.
what are your biggest takeaways
Well, I think it's important to remember that there are valid concerns on both sides of this.
Right.
People who are focused on border security and the rule of law have a point.
Right.
But the people who are advocating for compassion
Right.
and a more humane approach also have a point.
Right.
The hard part is finding that balance.
Yeah.
Finding a way to address both of those
Right.
without being inhumane.
It's easy to fall into that trap
It is.
of thinking it's black and white.
Yeah.
Us versus them.
Right.
But it's so much more complicated than that.
It's nuanced.
Right.
These are complex human stories.
Yeah.
Any solution that ignores that
Yeah.
is just going to fail.
We need to get past
Yeah.
the sound bites,
All the rhetoric.
the fear-mongering,
Exactly.
and have a real conversation.
A real conversation.
And it starts with listening to the people
It does.
who are actually affected.
Yeah, the families.
The children.
The children living in fear.
We have to see their humanity.
We do.
We're all connected.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter what your immigration status is.
We're all part of the same fabric.
Right. What affects one of us
Yeah.
affects us all.
Affects us all.
So don't let this be the end of the conversation.
Please.
Keep learning.
Keep asking questions.
Keep talking about it.
Yes, engage with this issue.
Because this is important.
It's so important.
This is the future of our communities.
Yeah, it really
The
is.
future of immigration in this country.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
We hope you'll check out other deep dives
Right.
on the Utica Phoenix YouTube channel.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of other topics.
We cover a wide range of issues.
So we hope to see you there.
We hope so.